So I want to do a mini series as part of my SimCity 101 in which we talk about the specializations that are part of the base game. I have used these specializations as part of my gameplay, but we haven't actually done a tutorial on them. I have played and done tutorials on Mega Tower, the Academy, and Omega. So the future specializations that are part of Cities of Tomorrow, we've gone over, but we have not discussed up until this point mining, drilling, electronics, culture, and gambling. I've done a video on trading. Trading is, I consider, a secondary, a support specialization. And you'll notice in 3 of the 5 tutorials that we do, trading is going to be mentioned as part of mining, drilling, and electronics. But what I want to do is I want to go through the base game specializations and just offer some information about them. Let's talk about some tips. Let's go over some strategies in order to help you when you're playing with these specializations. So in this episode, let's talk about electronics. Electronics is a very profitable specialization to get into. The cost to get started with electronics is higher than what you would find with, say, drilling or mining. So it tends to be more of a specialization that you get into when a city has become a little bit more mature. But to get started with electronics, you would start with a processor factory. And in order to unlock a processor factory, you're going to need to have 5 medium tech industrial buildings, or you're going to need to have 5 high-tech industrial buildings. The cost for your processor factory is 160,000 simoleons, and the hourly rate to run a processor factory is 700 simoleons. This does not take into account the cost of the modules that you would add on to the processor factory. But the base, this is the cost for the base processor factory. So when it comes to the electronic specialization, unlike the drilling and the mining, you're not really as concerned about the resources in the ground as far as this specialization is concerned. But when you look at the cost of getting started with this specialization, you may be starting out with drilling and mining to get to the point where you can afford to start a processor specialization. So just something else to keep in mind when it comes to getting started with processors. Another thing to think about when it comes to processors is your processor factory is going to run more efficiently with an educated population. So when you're dealing with drilling and mining, the education level is not nearly as important, but when it comes to dealing with a processor factory, you are going to want to have an educated population. It is going to help you from an efficiency standpoint. So a processor factory comes with 1 delivery truck. I always like to add an additional delivery truck. It comes with 1 assembly line. You can have up to 4 assembly lines. If you look at the dollar amount or the simoleon amount, you can see that each assembly line is costly, but it is worthwhile to max out your assembly lines. In order to create processors, you need alloy and you need plastic. So this may be a situation where you have a city where you started out with pulling a resource out of the ground, refining it into an alloy or a plastic, or the other thing that you can do is you can just import the alloy and the plastic. plastic import, alloy import. I find that with a single trade depot, if you've got 4 lots, 2 lots dedicated to importing alloy and 2 lots dedicated to importing plastic, that is enough alloy and plastic to supply not only one, but 2 processor factories, both maxed out with assembly lines. Once you have imported, or you have sent this city, or you have created the alloy and the plastic, and it has been sent to the processor factory, then it will go to the trade depot. You have very limited storage at the processor factory. In order to export your processors, you will need a trade depot, and the process of exporting the processors is 1,000 crates of processors. You would export it, and each export of 1,000 crates is 100,500 simoleons. Unlike drilling and mining, with those 2 specializations, you're always thinking about the future in that the product that you are extracting from the ground is finite. It will run out. With processors, you don't have that concern as long as you're importing in what you need and you're exporting processors. As long as you're not importing so many, having so many different trade depots, and you're importing too much and it's throwing out your profit, you can sustain a city with processors. This is that one specialization where if you do not want to continue on and upgrade further, you don't have to. If you've watched some of my videos, you've seen where I get a processor city up and running, and that's where I basically end the city. But if you export enough processors, you can start to think about the future as far as taking the next step, and then you can unlock the electronics headquarters. Once you unlock the electronics headquarters, it will give you the option of course, you want to put down your sign, but it will give you the option of a consumer electronics division and a commerce division. What you're going to want is the consumer electronics division. That will allow you to unlock a consumer electronics factory. So now that we have exported enough where we can do a headquarters, we've got the right module, now we can put down a consumer electronics factory. The consumer electronics factory is going to come with one delivery truck. It is going to come with a television assembly line, but you have the option of doing television or computer or both. When it comes to exporting and profits of those 2 items, televisions, to export televisions, 158,125 simoleons. Computers, 184,375 simoleons. When you think about the cost of getting a headquarters and the cost of a consumer electronics factory, along with the modules that you have to put down, the strategy that I would employ, but once again, this is up to you and your play style and what you want to accomplish, and you may want to experiment. I would export the item that gives you the greater overall profit, because if you're just exporting televisions, you may not notice that it makes a big difference compared to just exporting the processors. You still need processors. You may be in the process of creating the processors and then sending them to the consumer electronics factory. But in my opinion, if you're going to be doing it and using the consumer electronics, then computers is the way to go. So at this point, you're going to be needing more trade depots. You're still going to be needing to bring in plastic and alloy because you're going to be creating processors within your city. But then you're going to be, instead of exporting your processors, you're going to be keeping your processors local, but you're still going to need alloy and plastic at your consumer electronics factory. So by keeping the processors local, they will be delivered they will go from the processor factory to the trade depot to the consumer electronics, but you will also be importing alloy and plastic. You're going to need enough to not only keep a processor factory going, but a consumer electronics factory. As you can see, electronics, and once you get into the higher end, the consumer electronics, now you're talking about profits that are well above what you would find with drilling or mining or even the entertainment or the culture. The cost of entry is a bit high compared to the others, but it is an extremely worthwhile specialization to get into, and I highly recommend it. It is up to you if you want to go the route of the consumer electronics factory. I have many, many cities where I do processors and solely processors, and I don't even do an electronics headquarters or the consumer electronics factory. The profit that I get from processors, it may take a little bit longer than shipping out computers or even televisions, but it gets to the point where my city has quite a surplus of funds that not only serve the city that I'm working in, but I can send those funds out to other cities. But this is just an overview. There are so many different ways in which you can approach this, but I just wanted to offer some tips, some strategies, some information on how to get started with electronics. If you think of anything, if you have any questions, please post those in the comments. But I hope this helps. But enjoy, have fun with the game, and we will see you next time.